So my name is Soren Larson, and the research proposal question that I will be presenting today are what are the current expectations of collegiate athletes? So we'll first start off with student athletes in today's society. According to the National Collegiate Athletic Association, or the NCAA, their website state that nearly 480,000 students are also competing in athletics today, and that has been exploding in the past couple years, and especially with programs like the NIL or the G League or some other alternate leagues that students could go to. Collegiate athletes have become, or collegiate athletic has become much more of a business as of lately, and not like the go to school, get a scholarship, and what we've all been used to for the past however many years. That has definitely been changing. It's becoming more of a business every single day and every single passing year that has come by. So then, as we get into the athletics versus the academics, there was a study published in the Virginia Journal that they wanted to have student athletes share their differences in the amount of time that they spend between academics versus athletics. It was found that in season that student athletes spend approximately 21 hours per week on their athletic commitments, whereas if they only spend about 12 hours per week on their academic work uh, in season. So that's about a 9 hour difference. That's pretty significant. And it was even reported that some athletes have found jobs during their athletic season. So that's having a third wrinkle on top of both not only athletics and academics, but having a professional job as well. Some students even reported having to take different classes or a major due to the amount of time that it would take from their athletic endeavors, that their academic advisor recommended that they do a different one that they wanted to do, which just shows that athletics does definitely get into the way of academics. So it's hard to find a perfect balance between athletics and academics. And it's definitely even harder now that you have NIL and the other development leagues have becoming more of a business for student athletes. So then, as we look at some of the outside forces on student athletes, the three biggest ones that were found were coaches, fans, and institutions. Coaches were the biggest influence that they on student athletes and their success in school and on the field, off the field. A positive relationship between the student and the coach will cause a student to be more motivated to succeed within the classroom, is what one study said. Most studies that I was able to find found said that coaches were the main influence on whether a student athlete would be successful, and they were definitely. I can definitely see how that would be a factor in a student's success within school and out of school. As then we move to the fans. If you think of like Michigan or Ohio State, Penn State, they're almost 100,000 people in those football stadiums. So having the outside pressure on you to perform and do well, that would definitely be a major factor. The Journal of American College Health found that student athletes are more likely to develop a mental health problem, but they are much less likely to get diagnosed and properly treated compared to their regular student counterparts. So that just shows how much pressure that they're dealing with on a daily basis compared to a normal student, and how they feel and their feelings are put kind of behind in order for their athletic career to be successful rather than the opposite way around. And then as we move to institutions, schools now find it more have a bigger pressure on them to uh, give their athletes a good academic facilities, which would include tutoring centers, more research resources to help students, and a better support system around there. And they've been doing that according to the Journal of Athletic Development and Experience. These investments showed an increase in satisfaction, student involvement, and a better emotional adjustment. That just shows that athletic students also want to be successful in the classroom, so that the institutions have just as much of a relationship with the students as like a coach or a fan does. That if they truly want to be successful, they can't just leave their student athletes out high and dry to do whatever they can to succeed. They need to be held accountable and give them as much resources as they possibly can in order to succeed. And then as we move on to academic success and how it's measured, it's very difficult to find one real definition of how academic success is measured, and it'd be different for every single student in every single school. But the one journal found that generally academic success could best be predicted by looking at the grade point average or the GPA of a student athlete's first full year. This same tool could also be found to use the retention rate of the student athletes. So while it's not a one all be all way to measure athletics or academic success and how well a student can do, it's definitely nice to know that there is an indicator of what could possibly be coming. And if a student is struggling in their first year, having a hard time adjusting to the college life, that you could get them help early and not leave them out to flounder or fail later in their college career. Get that help early and make sure that they're on the right track. And then as you use that academic success to predict the future, there was a study focused on the U.S. Naval Academy to see if sports had any impact on grades. And the researchers found that students that participated in sports had very little drop off in academic success, and found that grades were the biggest indicator of future success. So making sure that athletes are not only successful on the court or on the field, but off the court, off the field, in the classroom, because I've definitely found in my research, looking at articles, that their sports had very little drop off. The people that played in sports had very little drop off in grades or success in their school. So making sure that students have the ability to get that help that they need and get them over that hump if they really need that extra help. And then as we look at the current landscape of college athletics, the biggest kind of factor would be the name, image, and likeness legislation, NIL. As we see, there's a picture of Bronny James on there. There's an NIL database out there that projects his NIL value at $7.3 million, which is much more than anyone else. And even in the past, there was college quarterback Caleb Williams that was offered up to $1 million to play at Eastern Michigan. So NIL has recently been passed. I think it was passed in the past, and it has been put in place in the past couple of years. So it's kind of I like to liken it to kind of the Wild West right now. There's not many rules out there. There's not many consequences for what you got going on. So these are likely to be capped in the future, but right now there's no limit on how big these deals are or could become. So this is definitely a great time for student athletes to capitalize on what they're worth, what they possibly could be worth, and what they could be worth in the future and what they bring to a school. So that's one big factor on college athletics right now. Another big factor would be just the NCAA and how much shifting around has been on their part. One example of that would be the realignment of conferences, with Texas and Oklahoma moving to the Southeastern Conference, and the University of Southern California and University of California, Los Angeles moving to the Big Ten. All four of these schools have been leaders in their former conferences, yet still chose to move on. So that definitely is a reason why you can point out why college athletics has become more of a business. Well, it's not completely confirmed. It's very likely that these schools will be moving on to a different conference due to the money that they will be gaining from the new conferences. And another example would be the expansion of the college football playoffs. They recently said they are looking at expanding it to 4 or 8 or maybe 12 teams. And well, it was impossibly it's 4. That just shows another reason why the NCAA is shifting it around to be more of a business rather than what it's been in the past for just us athletes in school. So as we move on to the purpose of the research, the gaps in literature that I found, obviously one would be the NIL legislation. With it being so new, that makes sense why there's not very many research articles out there so far. So that's something that I would definitely like to explore and see what the current relationship is for college students and potential or future college students, high school students. Another gap in research that I found was from coaches' perspective. I found a lot of articles stating that coaches are the biggest factor and impact on my students in their athletic or academic success, but I didn't find many articles from the coaches' perspective, saying that what they've done and what they have figured out in the past or in the future. Those are the two big gaps in research. So I would definitely focus on those in my research. In my research question again would be, what are the current expectations of a student athlete? So finding, I could definitely institute both the NIL and coach's perspective into my research questions and methodology. As we moved into methodology, I definitely want to, I think I would want to collect both types of data, being a mixed method collection, both qualitative and quantitative data, I think would be able to help me. Uh, with the four types of respondents, the I would want to interview or hear the perspective of coaches, institution, high school athletes, and college athletes. Uh, I definitely want to get all their input on what the current landscape of college athletics is, what they like and what they don't like, and how how the future they think that could change. So with the two types of instrumentation, I would definitely want to be doing an interview, interviewing probably the high school athletes and the collegiate athletes. And I think I'd want to do a survey for the coaches and institutions, definitely because the coaches and schools have less time compared to the high school and collegiate athletes, making sure that I want to get as many respondents as possible. So I don't want to make them go out of their way to potentially give them reason to say no or uh, not participate in the survey. So on the interview, I definitely would want to get as much detail as possible. So hearing the experience for these high school and college kids with questions like, how has NIL impacted uh, your athletic career? Or what do you think is more important in the future? Is it your academic career, athletic career? Questions like those would be stuff that I'd want to do for the interview. Whereas for the survey, I would probably want to do, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how have you seen the NIL impact how athletes come into the athletic programs? For like the coaches, I would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you feel like you guys play a role in the academic career or academic careers of these athletes? So making sure that I'm hitting on those gaps in the literature that I found and giving new light to the NIL definitely discussion and seeing how that has impacted uh, the scene of college athletics. And that's how I would answer the question of what are the current expectations of college athletes.